The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode 140.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the original series episode, The Conscience of the King. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and follow us on Twitter where we're at SQPN, and make sure to leave comments and share the episodes as you see them. That really helps the podcast a lot. So we are talking about this original series episode, The Conscience of the King, from the first season. It's the number 12th episode. So it depends on how we've talked about before, how the original series is rebroadcast, and there's different versions of the order, and we're just going off a particular order that I found at Memory Alpha.
Yeah, when you look at Amazon, we talked about the next episode before this, and it gets really confusing.
It gets confusing. So we have picked an arbitrary order, and this is how we're going.
Well, and we didn't invent this order, but we picked one of the orders arbitrarily.
Yeah, I do have to tell on myself, because when Dom told us that this was the episode we're going to do this week, I kind of groaned, because I was thinking, oh, great, we're going to go do another Discovery episode. Because there's a Discovery episode, Context is for Kings.
Yes.
And that's what I was thinking. It's like, we're going back to Discovery again?
Not yet.
And I will say, by the way, the Discovery writers wish they could write an episode this good.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I cringed for a different reason. So this episode, in case you're trying to remember which one this was from the original series, this one is Jim Kirk versus Space Hitler with lashings of Shakespeare. And I'm curious. Now, Father's already given an indication. Last time when Dom announced that we'd be doing this one next, he was very positive and looking forward to it. I'm wondering if he still is. I've seen this one several times in the past, but it's not one of my most watched episodes because and I haven't watched it in a long time because my memory is I hate it. But because of how positive Dom was, I thought, well, maybe I misjudged this. So I'm going to suspend judgment going into it and look for the good and see how much it changes my opinion. And it changed it a little, but not a lot. To me, this is still a lower third. If you rank all of the episodes in terms of, upper third, middle third, and lower third, this is definitely a lower third episode to me. And maybe I would probably say it's even a lower quarter episode. But now, Father, you've indicated you really liked it. Dom, upon your rewatch, how did you like it? Did it meet your expectations again, or were there any qualifiers?
No, I would not put this in my top 10 of episodes. That's for sure. And it might be, I'd say, toward the bottom of the upper third, if I was to make such distinctions. But there's still there's plenty of cheese. 60s style cheese in this, and there's still...
And I can look past that. That's not what ruins it for me.
And there's some cringy stuff, but I think there are elements, and we'll get into it, of Kirk's wrestling with morality, the gray areas surrounding Caridian and TOS, and some of that stuff I really enjoyed. I like some of this interaction between Kirk and Spock and McCoy. I enjoyed all that. There are some places where it kind of falls apart, but I still really liked it, and I just there are questionable aspects to the plot that they try to fix in other media. I'll get into that as well too. But But no, I still like it. I still do.
Okay. Father, you wanted to add something?
Well, and I should mention too, to remind people that this is my first watch through of TOS. I've seen TNG and beyond, dozens of times, but I've really never watched TOS. So, and I'm doing that on purpose. I mean, I could go and sit down and binge watch TOS and be fine with it, but I'm purposely doing it so that when I'm coming here, this is my first reaction to it.
Nice.
So I don't have quite the background with this episode. I really went into this episode blind. And I think that maybe that was part of my enjoyment, was just being able to enter into the episode a little bit. So.
Well, allow me to disillusion you then. So we should start by explaining the title. The title, The Conscience of the King, is an allusion to Shakespeare's play Hamlet. And in this episode, we have a bunch of space actors who are playing Hamlet and Macbeth and other Shakespearean plays for people to preserve Earth drama heritage out among the stars. And that's a nice idea. I like that. The specific line, The Conscience of the King, is, and this is clever, so I want to give the episode credit for this idea. In Hamlet, if you've never seen Hamlet, it's set in Denmark, and Hamlet is a prince of Denmark. His father's ghost appears to him at the beginning of the play and tells him that his uncle, Claudius, has killed him and then married his mother. So his uncle Claudius is a usurper of the throne who has now married the queen, Hamlet's mother, and it's Hamlet's job to get revenge on Claudius for what he's done. And Hamlet is kind of an indecisive guy. He's really passionate in some ways, but he's also really paralyzed in some ways. At one point, and this is one of the most chilling moments in the play, he comes across Claudius and could kill him. But Claudius is saying his prayers, and Hamlet is afraid that if he kills him while he's saying his prayers, he'll go to heaven. So it's not enough for Hamlet to just kill Claudius. He wants to kill him and send him to hell, which is really chilling and also is a mortal sin.
Right.
So Hamlet's not exactly a spiritually pure person. But then there's a group of actors who show up in Hamlet to put on a play for the king. And Hamlet decides that he's going to engineer the play they put on to mirror what happened with his father and mother and Claudius, and he will trick his uncle into revealing the fact that he did indeed kill Hamlet's father. And so that's where we get the line, "The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." He's going to get Claudius to betray his guilty conscience by putting on this play that mirrors his own circumstances. And so the play within a play is a somewhat common theme in Shakespeare, and it plays a particularly important role here in Hamlet. And so here on Star Trek, we're going to have a play within a play.
Within a play.
And if they were to pull it off right, they would do the same kind of thing that Hamlet did, which is use the performance to catch the conscience of Space Hitler out. Now, they don't actually do it that way. They try, but they don't successfully do it. But we can talk about that as we go along.
Yeah, the elements, it shares a lot of those same elements with the play. There's the leader with the troubled conscience, his crimes being exposed sort of during a play, at least the resolution of it during a play, and a daughter. What happens to the daughter? Well, I don't want to spoil anything.
Well, in Hamlet, just say 16th century spoilers. The main daughter in Hamlet, Ophelia, goes mad.
Yes.
Yep.
So there's some of these things. One of the things I want to point out about the episode is the network and the production house both were afraid that this was not going to be a popular episode. They were concerned.
That.
Well, part of it is because it's a talky episode with not a lot of action, no monsters, no sci-fi gimmickry. This is a dramatic.
Yeah, straightforward drama.
This could take place on a sailing ship, or a passenger liner across the Atlantic Ocean. There's nothing very specifically science fiction-y about this particular plot. So
and that's fine.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. I do like it begins with the episode, the very first image begins with a plunging dagger. Like the killing of someone with a dagger, and it's a very dramatic way to open up an episode. I can imagine sitting down watching TV, back in the 60s, and this is how Star Trek opens, as someone being stabbed, and then only then do we realize it's part of a play. They're doing Macbeth at that point with that one, and so we have Caridian, who's the head of this troupe of actors, this company, and who's asking, after having killed King Duncan, whether the whole ocean could wash the blood from my hands. And again, we're kind of playing with this idea of truth being revealed through the play of Kodos, who has an ocean of blood on his hands that can't be washed away.
So the backstory to this is 20 years ago on the planet Tarsus IV, and I like the name Tarsus IV. Yeah, Tarsus is a city. It happens to be this in like Syria, or in ancient Syria. It's where St. Paul was from. He was a native of Tarsus, and so on the colony Tarsus IV, which had 8,000 colonists, so a population of 8,000, there was a fungus that infected their food supply and almost completely destroyed it, and they couldn't get ships, they thought, in time. Rescue ships in time, and so they had to. The leader of the colony, Kodos, had to make a decision: how am I going to handle this? And he had apparently some revolutionary ideas. He refers to a revolution. I'm not sure what that is, but as governor, he decided the only way we're going to save anybody is if we kill half the population, and we're going to do it humanely. We're just going to disintegrate them. It'll be painless, but we've got to eliminate half the population. And he also was a eugenicist, so this is part of why he's Space Hitler, because Hitler not only conducted a genocide, but also one based on eugenic principles. Kodos, based on his eugenics theories, decided which half of the people would die, so it wasn't a random lottery. And apparently there are only 9 people who have survived out of the 4,000 that survived. Only 9 can identify him, can recognize him on sight, and that's sort of my first big problem with this episode. It makes no sense if you've got 4,000 survivors that only 9 people, 2 of whom were children or very young at the time, could
recognize. 3 of whom.
Oh, okay.
Including Riley. Yeah.
Including Riley, yeah. Only this handful of people could recognize the governor on sight.
Well, and in fact, Kirk later on will pull up an image of Kodos.
I know.
On the so
this is again, it makes absolutely no sense, because
this is the weakest point. Yeah,
you've got pictures of Kodos before and after, and just run biometric facial recognition. My iPhone could do this.
It's interesting. This was always been the weakest point of this story, is this premise that they built it on. And the book, the autobiography of James T. Kirk, something that we actually gave away to patrons a couple years ago as one of the patron benefits. So it's a book told from first-person point of view of James Kirk, reviewing his life, and they actually tell this story of what happened on Tarsus IV and provide an explanation for it.
Oh, well, good for readers of the book, bad for viewers of the episode.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, if you want to kind of settle your own your own dislike of this, and you desperately want an explanation that gives you some headcanon to make it work, you can find it in there. They do a pretty good job of that.
Now, remind me, at this time, Kirk would be mid-30s,
35 or so.
Yeah, because that's what I thought, because he was supposed to be the youngest captain of Starfleet and all that, and so he would have been a teenager at this point. Riley would be, I would guess,
10,
late 20s,
8?
Early 30s.
Yeah.
So again, about, before preteen, so you are talking about children. And it does mention in the episode that he purposely kept the children. He would kill the families, but he would keep the children.
Right. Yes. And then there's Kirk's friend who has invited him to this play, Dr. Tom Layton, and he was the same age as Kirk, who was also a survivor. Although he apparently was injured in the destruction somehow. That's not explained, but he has a prosthetic or a mask over half his face.
He looks like the Phantom of the Opera, where half his face is covered by something.
Right. Yeah.
We're not told why, but we're to presume that it's happened as a result of what happened on Tarsus IV. Yeah. And so Leighton is convinced that Caridian is Kodos, and called Kirk and the Enterprise to the planet. This is Planet Q, which interesting.
Okay. This is what people who weren't science fiction writers in the 60s would think a planet in the future might be named Planet Q. Yeah. You know how many letters there are in the alphabet?
Yeah.
You know how many planets there are out there?
Yeah. So,
come on, it's Planet Q, Queue, as in lining up.
Oh, that's what it is. Everybody's in line.
Kidding.
So he called them there on a false pretense, of some scientific breakthrough. But what he really wanted was to get Kirk there to confirm what Leighton believes is that this must be Kodos, and Kirk sort of dismisses it.
And the specific person he thinks it is the leader of the actor troupe, who's a guy named Anton Caridian.
Right.
And as they're going to show Anton Caridian, or as they're going to discover, Anton Caridian's biography does not go past 20 years in the past.
Right.
And he shows up almost to the day after Kodos vanished. Oh, another thing that makes Kodos Space Hitler is his body was burned.
Yes.
And so they had an unrecognizable burned body. And that's like what happened to Hitler. So at least the official story of what happened to Hitler, which we will be discussing on a future episode of Mysterious World, is that Hitler killed himself in the bunker in April of 1945, and he didn't want his body publicly humiliated by the Russians who were invading, and so he had his body cremated and then buried surreptitiously. And so we didn't have a recognizable Hitler body. And there's a question, is this really him? Is it a double? Is it someone else? And so that's another aspect that makes Kodos Space Hitler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's rumors that Hitler had gone to like Argentina with a bunch of his other SS friends and
or Indonesia.
So Kirk goes back to the Enterprise, does a little research, and gets suspicious. So he decides to attend.
Look at his driver's license, dude. It's the same guy.
Exactly. 20 years is not that long for someone like Caridian didn't even get plastic surgery. Like it's it's still the same guy.
He really, he really must have been short on cash or something, because, there are better ways to establish a legend for yourself and go deep cover.
Yeah.
Like plastic surgery, take over the identity of someone who did exist but is now dead so that you can hook into their backstory, change computer records, change your face, all kinds of things you could do that this guy totally did not do. And then he, despite the fact he was a public figure before, he decides to become an actor, another public figure, where people are going to see him.
Yeah. That you go underground. You don't. So Kirk gets suspicious and goes to Leighton has scheduled this cocktail party where he's invited the acting troupe to come so he can confront Caridian there. And so Kirk goes. And did you notice at the party as we see Kirk, walking around, you hear that a jazzy version of the Alexander Courage TOS theme playing in the background? So I thought that was kind of fun. Kirk ends up meeting and flirting with Caridian's daughter, Lenore, who is apparently...
We find out it's 19 years old, so...
Yes, Kirk. Well, Kirk's a dog. So, and he moves fast, let's say. They go for a walk. She invites him for a walk, so she's setting him up.
She sure doesn't look or act 19 years old, though. She acts like a much more mature woman.
Right. She's as we'll realize later, she's playing Kirk because she's intending him to stop and to kiss her at this particular place, but for him to stumble upon Tom Leighton's body. So Leighton is dead. So she maneuvered him to this place for him to discover this for reasons.
Because well, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a warning, because so we've kind of mentioned it here. She's crazy. She's killing off the last witnesses to her dad's crimes so that they can't harm him in the future. Her dad does not know she's doing this. She's just gone rogue and doing this on her own. Right. And so she's killed apparently 6 of them.
Yes.
That that we haven't seen, and then now she's killed Leighton, and she's going to kill Kirk, and she's going to kill Ensign Riley. And so this is all part of her elaborate plot.
And so she's apparently in charge of the scheduling of the troop, and so she's been scheduling the troop in these different places. And the story is sort of misleads us in the beginning to think that Caridian is the one who is killing off these people to cover up his crimes. But that the twist is that it will end up being Lenore. Leighton's wife, after they discover his body and bring him back to the house, this is the 60s. They don't do the whole the wife freaks out, and as would normally be the case, she's just mildly upset. Although she does cry with Kirk.
Well, back in the 60s, everyone was on tranquilizers, so
that's true. Yeah. But she asks what we're all thinking: why was Tom killed if what he suspected wasn't true, as Kirk had been saying? If Caridian's not TOS, then why was he killed? Well,
so this is another problem. Kirk is irrational in his defense of Caridian throughout this episode. He is constantly raising doubts about what is obvious to everybody else, including Spock. It's
at least to this point.
This is a man's life. I have to be absolutely sure. It's like, dude, that's what we have courts for. You've got a credible report that this guy is Space Hitler. Call in law enforcement. If you don't have the authority to arrest him yourself, call the authorities and get this guy into the judicial system. That's what it's there for.
Right.
And by the way, he's the captain. Yeah. He has, especially once they're on the Enterprise, he has absolute authority to arrest him. That's kind of part of Captain's prerogative.
Yeah, it's on the frontier. I think probably you could assume that in the future, the law enforcement in space, the Starfleet captains are law enforcement in these frontier areas or something. But so Kirk arranges to strand the troop. They're supposed to get on a space liner and go to their next place, but he is pals with the captain of the space liner, and he arranges to strand the troop so he can come to their rescue.
By the way, you notice the name of the space liner that's coming to pick him up? The Astral Queen.
Yes.
Which we also hear about in Battlestar Galactica.
Right.
Both versions of it.
That's right. Kirk doesn't say anything to Spock. Spock's perplexed.
And this is just more of the problem I have with this episode. It's further irrationality on Kirk's part in order to drive the plot forward. This episode depends heavily on the irrational withholding of information. It's the same problem as in the Sherlock Holmes stories, the Yellow Face or the Sussex Vampire. If people had acted rationally at the beginning of the story and said, well, here's what's going on, the story would have collapsed. And in the same way, if Kirk had acted rationally by just saying, okay, that looks like Caridian, let's arrest him and put him on trial, that would have been the rational thing. The episode would have collapsed in the first 10 minutes, and we wouldn't have a story. So Kirk has to be consistently irrational all the way through to create drama. Not only is he constantly worried about, is this really Caridian? Can I really believe, is this really TOS? Can I really believe my eyes or not? He also is doing stuff like withholding information from Spock that causes Spock to get suspicious of, is the captain even rational? So Spock is noticing this irrational behavior. He has Riley demoted from communications back to engineering with no explanation. He won't tell Spock why he's doing it. He won't even tell Spock. It's because we've got a potential war criminal on board and I don't want him coming in contact with it. Hey, how about going to Riley and saying, we have this potential war criminal on board. Could you come and maybe identify him and pick him out of a lineup or something like that? You don't have to worry about Riley's going to go rogue or something like that. If you just treat him like a rational human being, the man is a Starfleet officer. Well, and so
spoiler, he does try to go rogue at the end. But...
Well, he does, but you didn't have to have it go that way. The reason Riley goes rogue at the end is because he feels like this isn't being dealt with.
Right.
And if he felt like it is being dealt with up front, then, that would have been the rational way to proceed. But no, Kirk has to irrationally withhold information to Admiral Holdo levels of secrecy that just cause problems.
I could buy Kirk not arresting Caridian right off the bat, wanting to build a case and develop evidence.
Then do that.
That's fine.
Which he does. I mean, they show him going through the computers. Of course, they're understanding what computers could do then versus what we, again, our smartphones can do today is completely different. But he's going through the library, he's looking at the records, he's looking at I can even see him. It's been 20 years. Do I really remember what this guy looks like? And that
today,
kind of stuff.
Yeah. So. Today we'd collect DNA and do DNA sequencing, but they didn't have any of that then. So I'm okay with the waiting to arrest. But yeah, the not telling anyone, you have to assume, like, it sort of builds in the idea that Kirk is being irrational because of trauma from the event or something along those lines. But yeah, he should have been talking to other people. That does make more sense. You can make the case that maybe he's traumatized, but it doesn't say it.
That's us fixing in our head the flaws that are objectively there in the episode.
I mean, I do like the fact that it allows for Spock and McCoy's scenes, which are, McCoy's basically like, I really don't care. I like when the first part there where he's trying to have a drink and he's like, I really don't care right now. I just want a drink.
McCoy's, and this is so, Dr. McCoy, we need to have a talk about your on-the-job drinking issue. because he's clearly on duty. He's in sick bay. He's waiting for people to come in, and he says, this is the first time it's been slow enough for me to have a drink in a while. And it's like, okay, you're drinking on the job and you're a medical professional. This is not a good combination.
Well, this was from the beginning, from the cage. They had that Dr. Boyle was drinking with the captain.
Oh, they were off duty then. They're in the captain's quarters. I can handle that. This is he's sitting there in med bay waiting for patients to come in,
having a drop of the true. Yeah,
McCoy's supposed to be basically the old West doctor. You watch any like John Wayne movie or something like that. You always got the old West doctor who's usually about half drunk half the time.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Spock-McCoy interaction, but I did want one little note. When Lenore comes on board, she comes on the bridge to ask for the captains to rescue the troop. As Lenore is leaving the bridge, Janice Rand is coming up in the turbolift, and as she walks up, she gives her this really sour look, like, what's this chippy doing here? Exactly. I wanted to point out a little behind the scenes thing. That moment is Grace Lee Whitney's final filmed appearance on the original series. She had just found out she'd been fired, basically. And she had been going through a lot of personal problems, and afterward she struggled with alcohol and other things like that. And so this would be her last time on the original series, which is interesting given that Trekkies generally think of her as part of the original crew. But she wouldn't show up on Trek again until the motion picture. We would see her again. So very interesting little note there. But that was her last. She does appear in the next episode that aired, but that was filmed prior. But anyway.
By the way, there's an interesting exchange when McCoy's boozing in sick bay.
Yep.
Where he offers Spock a drink. He's actually trying to push drinks on Spock, which is another sign of alcoholism. If you're trying to push drinks on other people to get them to drink with you so that your behavior seems normal. But Spock says, my ancestors or my father's race were spared the dubious benefits of alcohol. And McCoy says, now I know why they were conquered. It's like, wow.
Well, apparently the Vulcans were conquered by somebody at some point. That's
and the implication in context could be they were conquered into the Federation.
Oh, that's an interesting, a little bit that never was done anything with, thankfully. And also, we mentioned Lieutenant Riley. In case you're wondering, yes, it is the same Lieutenant Riley from the Naked Time episode who was singing "I'll Take You Home, Kylene."
Yeah, fortunately, he's much better. He's much better used as a character here. He's not nearly as annoying.
It was supposed to be a different character, but then they hired the same actor and decided to make it the same character, which is fine.
And he did get a promotion though, because he was. I think he was ensign in the first episode, but now he's lieutenant.
Yeah, obviously, Kirk didn't hold it against him. He was under the influence. We have a scene where we see the observation deck above the shuttle bay for the only time. That's
scene. Nice.
Mm-hmm. We do get some super obvious double entendre talking here.
Oh, wow, yeah.
This was very 60s. All this ship, all this power, the surge get under control. I'm like, whoa.
She's even more verby than that. Yeah.
I toned it down a bit because I turn red thinking about it. And then Kirk says, "Worlds may change, galaxies disintegrate, but a woman always remains a woman." And then Lenore's, "All this and power too, the Caesar of the stars and the Cleopatra to worship him." I'm like, yeah, this is peak 60s cringy man-woman interaction. It's very, very a little much. So Spock has been doing his own research and goes to talk to McCoy about Tarsus IV when Kodos decided who would live and die.
And he's laying the pretext for an intervention with Kirk,
yes,
which we then see. But he's also, if he's at least the way they flesh this out in other episodes of the original series, he's laying the pretext for removing Kirk from command.
Right, because these are the next two. Well, you got to have the chief medical officer to invoke the equivalent of the 25th Amendment to say that Kirk is unfit for command, and the first officer has to take control. So, meanwhile, Riley's been temporarily demoted back to engineering, where he's all alone on the late shift, and he calls the rec room because he's lonely. And then we have Uhura singing him this song, Beyond Antares, while on the Vulcan lyre, while somebody poisons his food. And I felt like, was there not enough material to make a whole episode? Like why do we have this long interlude of Nichelle Nichols, who's a wonderful singer? Then appreciate that. But why do we have this song in the middle of this episode?
Well, it's to fill the runtime and to give us something that he can focus on while a gloved hand reaches in and uses a spray bottle to squirt something into his milk that he's drinking. And the fact it's not just an ordinarily gloved hand. This is like industrial dishwashing gloves over an arm with an unrecognizable plasticky substance. So this is clearly there to keep us from realizing that the person poisoning his milk is a woman.
Yeah.
Because we could otherwise recognize from a bare hand or even an ordinary gloved hand in many cases whether it's a man or a woman doing this.
Unless it's Seinfeld and she has man hands. Which, I don't know if you guys remember that Seinfeld episode.
Didn't see Seinfeld.
Okay, yeah, there was a whole episode about a woman who had man hands. So Kirk responds to Spock angrily because when Spock shows up, it's my personal business, and Spock says
he is irrationally hostile to Spock.
Yeah.
Yes, and Spock says it's my business when it interferes with the ship, and McCoy jumps in correctly on Spock's side, saying, "Yeah, this isn't just your personal business, Captain."
Well, especially if it was this space Hitler. Yeah, this is like official business at this point, because he needs to be arrested, et cetera, et cetera. So
now Kirk says something interesting here. Oh, Jimmy, did you have something you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say McCoy he's kind of on both sides in this, which is interesting. One of the things he says, he also challenges Kirk by saying, "Are you after justice or vengeance?" Because Kirk says, "I'm after justice." It's like, okay, then go arrest the guy and put him into the justice system.
Right.
But Kirk acknowledges that he's not sure, does he want justice or vengeance? And this is very hard to explain. If he's really being torn between justice and vengeance, he should be wanting to go after this guy emotionally, and he's not. He's hanging back irrationally from doing what needs to be done. But Kirk then says, "I've placed my command in jeopardy." It's like there's another illustration on the part of the writers that they recognize Kirk is acting irrationally in this plot, and they haven't done anything to explain that. They haven't established that he's dealing with PTSD or anything like that. He's doing the opposite of what you would expect someone bent on vengeance to do here. He's hanging back irrationally.
Right. And his feelings with Lenore is maybe confusing things, which they'd bring up later on, and that sort of stuff. Yep. So I did like his discussion, though, of like, he's not... They made it a little more complex. Like, Kirk is not just, no, I'm in it for the justice, or I'm in it for vengeance, but Kirk doesn't know. He recognizes his own weakness in that sense. So I did like that. So then we have a shift, like we have a jump in time. McCoy is gone, where Kirk and Spock are still in Kirk's quarters, and then they start hearing a phaser on overload, at which point Kirk calls a double red alert, which is twice as bad as a regular.
Only time we hear a double red alert.
Yes, this isn't just a regular red alert; it's a double red alert, so it's bad. They go to evacuate this part of the ship or whatever, while Kirk looks for it in his quarters and tears everything apart. I love when he opens a book. Looking for it in there.
Yeah.
I like that he eventually finds it. It's in the red alert signal thing in his quarters, and so he like pries off the cover and takes it out of there, and then runs into the hall and puts it in a garbage chute. And the garbage chute is actually an interior garbage chute. I mean, you look at the curvature of the hallways, and it's going to be going deeper into the saucer section rather than quickly out of it. But apparently it's gonna. In any event, it gets outside the ship before it blows. Yeah,
it says vacuum something or other. So so apparently, if you need to get something off the ship, really, if you want to get rid of your yogurt cup really quick outside the ship.
Of course, it happens to be phaser size, so I mean that's very convenient. Just happens to fit the phaser perfectly.
Well, maybe you have phaser overloads as a thing. Maybe that's just like, oh, my phaser's overloading. Hold on.
Oh, I hit the wrong button again. Got to throw it out.
If that's their garbage chute, they must have really small waste baskets in their quarters.
That's right. So Kirk finally goes to confront Caridian in his quarters, who doesn't seem at all surprised to be asked if he's Kodos. And I have to say, the actor Arnold, who plays Kodos Caridian, Arnold Moss, has a great deep voice for the role, and which is good because the voice is so important. The voice is the key to everything here. So I like his voice acting in this, so it's really good.
And I have in my notes that he does reasonable acting in this episode. I mean, with the script, which I don't like at all, he does a good job executing what's in the script.
Mm-hmm. And what Kirk does is has Caridian read Kodos's speech from the Tarsus IV massacre into the computer for a voice comparison, which is an interesting little bit of future tech.
Which they then do manually because they basically get the voice prints and
there is that. Yes.
Line them up. But
it's future tech. Caridian criticizes Kirk as a symbol of our technical society, mechanized, electronicized, not very human. You've done away with humanity, the striving of man to achieve greatness through his own resources and without mercy. But it's interesting because Kirk actually dismisses he gets the voice print later and says, I can't make my judgment just based on what the computer says. I have to do it from my humanness. So he's not really this symbol of the... And whereas Kodos...
But, dude, all you need is probable cause, and the voice print has given you probable cause. Arrest the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the basis of the problem is that Kirk isn't looking to arrest. He's looking to be judge and jury of Kodos, and that's that. And I don't know if that's a flaw in the concept of the script or just a flaw in Kirk that he's disobeying or something along those lines. They don't spell it out, but I
think it's a flaw in the script because Spock should be saying if they want to portray Kirk as being irrational in this way because of his history, then Spock needs to be pointing out what Kirk should do.
Right.
And Spock is not pointing that out. So that tells me it's a script flaw.
Well, and Kirk here says he's not looking to arrest. Like he's basically, he kind of says, as he's dismissed by Caridian, if I'd gotten everything I wanted out of this encounter, you might not have gotten out of this room alive, which, is supposed to shock us because Kirk is the hero. He's not supposed to murder someone in vengeance.
There's this theme of being human and mercy and all that stuff. And of course, mercy is used in a very, as we find out later, perverted way. Mercy being just forget it all happened.
Right. As opposed to the justice. Well, and where was Kodos's mercy back in the day? Now, Kirk says to Lenore comes out of the other room and confronts Kirk, and where's your mercy, Captain? And he says, if he's Kodos, then I've shown him more mercy than he deserves. And if he isn't Kodos, then I'll let you off at Benicia, their destination, and no harm done. And Lenore says, who are you to say that what harm was done? And Kirk says, who do I have to be? Which is an interesting question.
Line.
Yeah. Like, what does he mean by that? Like, who do I have to be to say that no harm was done? Well, I mean,
it's just to give him something to say so he can leave the room while saving face as captain, but it doesn't really seem to mean very much.
It gives him the last word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then McCoy does another stupid thing. Apparently, he's still drinking on the job.
And he's sitting there in his office with Kevin Riley in the other room, just mere feet away.
Yes.
And he's dictating his medical log at full volume, saying that Riley's medically capable of being released now. He's recovered from his milk poisoning. But Kirk has ordered him kept here in sickbay to keep him from interacting with the guy he thinks is Kodos the executioner.
Who killed Riley's family.
Who killed Riley's family, his parents. And Riley overhears this, as he would, given this setup.
Yep.
And so he sneaks out of sickbay. And it's like, McCoy, dude,
stop drinking.
They could have staged this in a way. I mean, if he had just lowered his voice,
yes,
and they had portrayed O'Reilly as having to strain to hear this would be better.
Yeah,
but he's just sitting there announcing this to everybody in sickbay, including the guy in the other room.
yeah, that's true. That's on McCoy. So Kirk and Riley is showed up at the players are putting on Hamlet in the ship's theater, which looks suspiciously like engineering, and Riley has gone there with a phaser to confront and kill Kodos / Caridian
on stage, and then he'll yell "Sic Semper Tyrannis" and run off and die in a barn fire, maybe. Oh wait, that was John Wilkes Booth.
Yes, and then but Kirk intercepts him and convinces him not to kill Caridian.
Oh, not only that, Kirk interrupts attempted murder and then lets the perp go.
Yeah, well, I think Kirk's feeling what Riley's feeling. So
yeah. Also, though, and this is the closest we come to the conscience of the king bit. As Kirk is intercepting O'Reilly, they're talking, and O'Reilly is talking about how Kodos murdered my whole family. And at the moment, they're putting on Hamlet on stage, and they're doing the ghost scene from the beginning of the play. And so Kodos is out on stage, and he's got a mask that he's holding up to signal that he's a ghost. And as he's delivering his lines, there's a pause, and he hears Riley's voice from behind stage talking about how Kodos murdered his parents. And we can see Kodos kind of react to that. He pauses or flinches a little bit, and that's where they're trying to show us the conscience of the king is being pricked by something that happens during the course of a play. But it's not at all an exact match for what happens in Hamlet.
Sure. And he does deliver the line, "Thy soul frees thy young blood," as Riley says that. So it's got a sort of double meaning there. Now Lenore shows up, and Caridian comes back, and there's this three-way encounter between Kirk, Caridian, and Lenore. And Caridian doesn't realize that Lenore knows his real identity. "You are the one thing untouched by my crimes," he says. But this is where she reveals.
He also doesn't know she's a psychopath who has been killing people she perceives as threats to him.
Right. She reveals she's been killing those who could identify. And this is all very Shakespearean. This is the sort of thing Shakespeare would, this convoluted a bit of things.
It's also an extreme form of enabling.
Yes. I have to say, the actress who plays Lenore, she does a pretty good job of looking at Crazy Pants, the cuckoo. There's madness in her eyes.
Well, and they do the zoom in on her eyes, and they're wide open and looks crazy.
And they light it in such a way as to make it look like the glinty-eyed, weird,
and none of the usual soft focus, Star Trek soft focus, that they do on women.
Very harsh. She yells, "I would have killed a world to save him," and which is ironic, given that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He killed half a world to save the other half. So it's sort of showing that she's cut from the same cloth. And then as Lenore goes to shoot Kirk with the phaser that Kirk stupidly let her get off, or no, the security guard.
He calls a guard to arrest him, and she grabs the phaser off the guard.
These guards are terrible at keeping the phaser security. They do this too often. They need retraining. Caridian throws himself in front of Kirk, and Lenore shoots him by mistake, and that's where she has this break with reality. and she starts doing all the lines from the play of the character in Hamlet, who has killed her father Claudius, and then she's hauled off, and Caridian dies.
And we're told later that she's like had a complete psychotic break and thinks her father's still alive and is playing to sold out audiences, and they're going to try to help her with their 23rd century space medicine.
So, and at the end on the bridge, you have Kirk and McCoy talking, and McCoy asks Kirk, "Did you really care for Lenore?" And Kirk doesn't answer; just gives the order to leave orbit. And McCoy is, "You're not going to answer my question, are you?" And he
Kirk
just
says,
says, warp back to 1. Yeah, and McCoy says, "Well, that's sort of an answer."
And we were told earlier that he had bizarrely fallen in love with Space Hitler's space daughter, because he, at one point she accuses him of just using her to get close to her father, and he says, "Yes, in the beginning I was doing that, but then it became something more than that."
Because you always have to do that in these stories.
Yeah.
You always fall in love with the person you're using to get, romantically or whatever. So, all right. Any last notes on this episode, Father Cory?
Well, I will finish up by saying that, yes, my impression of this episode has been duly ruined. Thanks, Jimmy. No, I'm kidding. But
now I hate it.
But it is still better than most Discovery episodes. So I know, very low bar to clear. But
low bar. Jimmy?
So there are loads and loads of Shakespeare allusions in this. And so if you're watching this episode and they're saying something that seems weird or kind of a little unexpected turn of phrase, it's likely to be a Shakespeare thing.
Yeah.
And my overall general assessment of the episode in my notes is dreary with occasional moments of romance.
So I am in agreement with Ronald D. Moore, who worked on DS9 and was the executive producer of Battlestar Galactica. He says this was his favorite episode of the original series, which I think is kind of weird because there are many better episodes. But
City on the Edge of Forever.
No kidding. Yeah. But I do agree with him that this. I like Kirk in this episode. Despite whatever the script flaws were, I like the idea of that he's haunted by the past and trying to balance his duty as a captain and his duty to justice with the pain of the what he suffered as a child, essentially, and his friend being killed and that sort of thing. So I did like those aspects of it, and that's one of the things I like about the story. And I like I really like the Arnold Moss as Caridian / Kodos. Also, this is where the Simpsons get the alien character Kang and Kodos. Yeah. So those are some of the elements I really enjoyed about this episode, and I'm probably influenced by having seen this when I was younger and being wicked impressed by the Shakespeare stuff. So that might be also part of why I like it so much. So, all right, let's wrap things up there. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Andrea M., Laura R., Mary Ellen R., Robert B., and Alfredo M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. Now's a great time to become a StarQuest patron, thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter when you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give. The first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. So if you become a new patron at $10 a month, after 3 months, our donor will give $30 to StarQuest to support all our shows, including this one, making your gift go even further. If you've been thinking of becoming a StarQuest patron, now's the time. Visit sqpn.com/give today. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What did you think of the original series episode, The Conscience of the King? Top third, lower third, middle third? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Next Generation episode, Evolution. That's the Season 3 first episode. So until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, spare me your philosophical metaphors, Doctor.